Hi, this is PatZi with a Z. Welcome to Joy on Paper Live, a program for writers and those who dream of writing, and for everyone who wants to know the story behind the book. And oh, I've got stories today. Oh my goodness, because I have two fantastic authors for a special Valentine's Day interview. What could be better? An American and a Brit. And I've got TASHA ALEXANDER, of course, the Lady Emily series, and Andrew Child for Jack. Goodness, my goodness, this is so exciting. Hi.
PatZi, hi. It's an absolute pleasure to join you today. Thank you so much for having us as guests on this special show.
It's amazing, and it's so nice to be able to see you.
Yeah, isn't it? It's fantastic. I'm having fun with this YouTube channel. Now, of course, in on the radio program, and I still have the radio program, of course, every Tuesdays and Thursdays. There, I have Big Ed in the control room, and he helps me. And all those years I went in the control room, into the studio, and he didn't care if I came in my pajamas with my hair in curlers. With the YouTube, it's more challenging. You have to do makeup and hair and stuff. Oh my goodness. It makes you really, I never appreciated all those young girls who have programs on YouTube. I never appreciated them until I discovered how much work it is. But I'm having fun. And, two books. We're talking about two books. And this is so fantastic. Of course, Tasha, the newest book, as always, they get better all the time. And Death by Misadventure is a wonderful book. And we're going to be talking about that. And then, of course, Drew, you have hit it again. In Too Deep is fantastic. And so we're going to talk about that. Drew, don't get jealous. I have somebody who wants to say something special to Tasha on Valentine's Day. But don't get jealous. It's somebody who loves her and has loved her ever since he met her at the Vinoy Hotel.
Say I love you, on that you can rely. No matter what the future brings, as time goes by. Moonlight and love songs.
And here he is.
He always looks so dashing in his bow tie.
Oh, yes.
A real gentleman.
Yes, he is. And he enjoyed meeting you at the Vinoy, and he never forgot it. He sent you a Valentine's Day card. It was fantastic to meet you there. Wow, it's so many years ago now. It's hard to believe how many books in between. And we've done so much together. You've been on the program. You hosted the program during the COVID when one time I couldn't handle it anymore. I've appreciated everything you've done for me. And of course, everybody knows that you're New York Times bestselling authors. And I've had this group of fans over the years who have followed you, have all sorts of comments about your books. They always have questions. So I've got some questions coming up that are from my viewers, and so I'm going to be asking those. But let's start. We'll start today because it's the Valentine's Day program. We'll start with Tasha because I want to show her something. I've got a little video too because we're talking about a very special place to both of us because my husband and I spent a lot of time in Austria to ski, and where we went was very close to Bavaria. And so I wanted to show this because we're going to be talking and Tasha's going to tell us. So we have a wonderful castle that most people don't realize that they've seen it.
Yeah, I think people think that the Disney castle is such an original, wonderful, magical thing. They just ripped it off from Ludwig II, who built the real deal in Bavaria in the 19th century. And he was something of an eccentric guy. I got very interested in him when we were on a road trip in Europe, and were in Bavaria and went to see Neuschwanstein, also Hohenschwangau, the castle where he grew up. People always call him Mad King Ludwig. He was crazy. But when you really start researching his life, it's such a truly sad, tragic story. You read his diaries and you see how he struggled with the conflict between his devout Catholicism and his homosexuality. And this was a man who was trying to do what he thought was the right thing, but that was completely against everything that his heart told him. So it's a really sad story.
Yeah, it is.
Despite
And
the fairy tale castles.
Yeah, his vision to build the castle is just amazing, that story. But I was always interested. I discovered him really because I was interested in Empress Elizabeth, of course, Franz Joseph's wife, and I love her. She was called Sissy, and of course she was fantastic, and she loved him so much. They were very close.
She did. And I mean, see, it doesn't surprise me at all, PatZi, that you're interested in her too. I have long been obsessed with her. She was such a fascinating woman. And yeah, they were tremendously close friends. And when he did get engaged, and I think part of the reason that he ended the engagement was that he didn't want to hurt someone who was so close to her. And he knew he could never love that woman the way she would want to be loved, even in a royal marriage. And I think that was very noble of him, frankly, because so many people throughout history, when you're looking at royal marriages, a lot of people just do what they're quote unquote supposed to do without thinking about the personal impact it's having on the other party.
I agree. I always thought the same way about him. I think he's very special. He was very intelligent, and what a perfect location. So you discovered it, and then you came out with the story for Lady Emily, because you're always looking for a new place for Lady Emily to go. And this story is really great. I love also the modern castle. So tell us about the story. Again, we have definitely a nod, homage to Agatha Christie, but also to Dorothy Sayers, because you have French and German phrases that you don't put into English. And I love that because, of course, she always did that with mostly French and Latin. When you were there, had you already been looking for a new Lady Emily location, or it just came to you when you saw it?
Actually, it came to me when we were there that I wanted to do the story, but I didn't write it for years, actually, because I had other things percolating in my head and other stories I wanted to tell. This had been kind of simmering on the back burner for a very long time. And I'm glad that I waited, because the villa that Emily and Colin are staying in is this very modern house. And it's hard, or I should say it's easy to forget that when you're past the turn of the 20th century, you start getting things that feel much more contemporary than I think most of us think. You start getting very modern architecture, very contemporary art. It's really interesting. And so with having waited a few years to do it so that we were into the 20th century, I could have the contrast of, as you said, the modern castle and the reimagined medieval castle.
So they're separated by 40 years, the story. So we have the 1868 part, and then we go back and forth. Tell us about, let's start with the Baroness, Ursula.
She's a dear friend of Cecile's, and as readers will know, Cecile Dulac is an extremely elegant Parisian of a certain age who is really Emily's closest friend. And Cecile just, I think, lives the life that we all sort of wish we could live. She just does what she wants. She's very kind to people around her, but she doesn't suffer a fool. She only drinks champagne. She carries it with her if that's necessary when she's in areas.
She's my kind of person. That's what I believe in. That's I could stick just with champagne.
And she's had a lot of fun throughout the book. She had a raucous affair with the artist Gustav Klimt. She's always connected to the world of art and music, and she is one of the main people responsible for really opening Emily's horizons in the beginning. So in this book, she has invited Emily and Colin to join her to visit her dear friend Ursula's for lack of better phrase, housewarming party at her new fantastic modernist villa in the Bavarian Alps. And of course, it had to be the winter because I love mountains and I love snow. And I just couldn't bear to write a book about the mountains without having the snow.
And of course, it's perfect for an Agatha Christie inspired story because we need them all locked up. They can't get out. Otherwise, you'd have perhaps you could have had a road collapse on the mountain. But if without that, the snow is the next. Actually, it's the best thing because it's so pretty.
Yes, because you get the locked room effect. But I feel like it's less claustrophobic than if you're on an island and the bridge is washed out or whatever.
Yeah, I think it's perfect. The story, the modern castle, this was a little world building, or did you actually find? I haven't been there for 20 years, so I didn't know if you came across somebody who had built a modern all glass.
I didn't see one in the mountains in Bavaria, but I did. I can't even say really base it, but I very loosely based it on, gosh, this is terrible. The architect's name is escaping my mind. A German architect who was building really cutting edge buildings in Germany at the time. And so he had built a number of villas, one of which he actually lived in. And that's what I was using as the basis for Ursula's spectacular retreat in the mountains.
I want that one. I would prefer that. I love really avant-garde, wild, lots of glass, lots of metal. That's my ideal building.
And it's so perfect in the mountains because you want the views to come inside to you. You don't want to be separated from those views.
Exactly. Tell us the story. A couple of things are funny about this story. First of all, I think you're the only one I've ever had who's had a tuba player. And so I thought to myself, I was wondering, were you in the band? You're so little. Did you play the tuba?
No, I did not. I actually, in grade school, played flute and piccolo.
So did
briefly.
I played
flute. Of course.
Of course. I was in the marching band I played the flute and the piccolo in the marching band, and we used to play at the University of Michigan football games.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I didn't go past 8th grade and there was no marching involved. But Ludwig was, I think it's fair to say, obsessed with Wagner, and not only him as a human, but also his music, and particularly his operas. The Ring Cycle would be, I guess, Lohengrin too. He was obsessed with all of Wagner's operas. And of course, Wagner, he just had such a vision for his work. He built the theater at Bayreuth because he wanted to control how the seats felt and how the acoustics were, and how he must have been unbearable, let's be honest, but he was micromanaging every piece of the experience of viewing his work when he could. And Ludwig was actually a huge financial supporter of his. But Wagner, I'm not exactly clear on the details of it, but didn't he invent kind of his own Wagner tuba?
Yeah, I think he did. You're right.
Because the regular tuba wasn't quite right for what he needed. And you've got to admire the dedication, right? He's saying, there isn't an instrument that sounds right, so I will. And like I said, I don't know if he just went to a brass instrument maker and said I needed to sound more like this, or if he drew sketches or what. I don't know the details, but I appreciate that he had that attention to detail. And so I thought it would be fun to have a character who admired Wagner and who played the tuba.
And
it's kind of funny too.
Yeah, it's fun. I think it would start avalanches, but anyway,
I think you're right.
Yeah, we definitely need no tuba phones, don't they, in those kind of areas?
Exactly. Okay, so tell us about Casper, this wonderful bad character. He's the guy who's people want to kill.
I think we all want to kill him.
Yeah, I love when you use the word loutish. So tell us about him, because I thought, yeah, that's a perfect word.
Yeah, so he's just not a very nice guy. He's he is loutish. He is a brute. He does what he wants when he wants to. He doesn't care about how anyone around him feels, but he has very expensive habits and no income of his own. So he's relying on his wife's fortune to fund the lifestyle that he wants. And he's not particularly nice to her. He doesn't have a lot to recommend him, frankly.
No, he doesn't. And I thought his name actually was perfect too. Casper. I thought Casper. I got a kick out of it because when you're picking a name for somebody that you don't want somebody to like, picking Casper Elsbach I thought was a perfect choice.
I'm glad. I'm so glad. He also has the problem that his wife's fortune is not in the form of capital. She is her mother's sole heir, and her mother, Ursula, is tremendously, fabulously wealthy. But his wife is not going to inherit any capital until her mother dies. So they are reliant on an allowance coming from his mother-in-law.
Poor Sigrid.
Yes, but I feel like this is a hard book to talk about because it's just too easy to give things away.
Yeah, exactly. I know. I'm sort of playing around the edges.
Yeah, no one is exactly how they seem.
Yeah, they're
you feel sorry for Sigrid and you hate Casper, but there's more to the story.
Oh, there's a lot more to the story. So that's why it works out so perfectly. I thought, yeah, this is really great. And I'm going to come back to that allowance idea in a little while because I have a question from somebody who wants to know something about allowances. So we're going to talk about that. This is a great book. It's number 18. My goodness, which is a lucky number. You know, it's a high, it means high, so to life. And I thought about that as every time she drinks champagne. That's what we always say when we drink champagne. To life, high. So that was great. So this is a wonderful book. And I know that you've already finished this number 19.
I have. That's the other thing that makes it hard to talk about 18 because now my head is completely full of Boudica, who is a featured character in the second timeline in the next book.
I think it's going to be, I'm sure that's going to be fun, but this book is really fun. People will really love it, and we're going to come back a little bit more to it again. But we have somebody else to talk to here. And Andrew Child, you're doing it. You're knocking it out of the ballpark too, with In Too Deep, which is again another great book. And one of the things I love about it, I love everything about it, but it's number 29. My goodness, of the Reacher series, and you've done 5 of them. 5.
That's right. Yes, I can't claim credit for all of them, but unlike Tasha, who's written all 18 of her own. But yeah, I've done 5, and then working with my brother who did the first 24. So it's been a really fun experience.
And you also, I understand 30 is done too. Yes?
It's on its way. It's nearly done. Yeah. It'll be done very soon.
Okay. This one, I knew from the first paragraph, I immediately said, oh boy, somebody's in big trouble. You do not shackle. You do not shackle Jack Reacher.
Bad decision.
Yeah, it's a little bit like, I remember years ago becoming obsessed with reading about Genghis Khan. And at one point, before he was the Genghis Khan that everybody knows now, at one point somebody kidnapped his wife. And I remember thinking, if you were going to make a list of really bad decisions in history, kidnapping Genghis Khan's wife would have to be pretty close to the top. And I think that finding Jack Reacher unconscious after a car wreck and dragging him off and shackling him to a table, that's close to as being as bad as kidnapping Genghis's wife, I think.
Oh, I think so. Definitely. I knew right then, I said, oh my goodness, we are going to have to keep turning the pages because somebody is going to get it. And so I got such a kick out of it.
Yeah, quite a few people went up. Actually, I was quite surprised as the story moved along because it took a while for people to for the comeuppances to come up, didn't it? But I think in the end, the people who deserved it got what was coming.
Oh.
That's one of the things we love about Reacher.
So, Tasha, when you read that first paragraph, did you know that Jack Reacher was in trouble?
Oh, I knew that whoever had done that to Jack Reacher was in trouble.
Oh yeah, whoever had done that to Jack Reacher was in trouble. Did that paragraph come straight to you? Or I know in some of them, sometimes you have to really work on the first paragraph. You really struggle with it. Not you necessarily. Maybe everything you write is just perfect the moment it comes out. But
I wish.
but with this one, it's just so much fun. This opening.
Yeah, the way that I try and work in the same way that my brother did, because I want the books to come out with the same kind of feel and the same kind of tone. So it seems like working in the same way makes sense. And so the idea is to start off by just trying to think of an opening scene or an opening feeling, something that you can then use as the foundation. And so the idea that I had for this one was I just wanted it to be that it started right almost in the middle with Reacher already in some kind of trouble. I didn't know initially what that kind of trouble was going to be, but I wanted it to be that he was in some way handicapped or held back or just held back in some way. As I thought it through, I thought the most likely way for that to be Reacher spends his whole time hitchhiking around. At some point, if you spend enough time in dodgy cars that people pick you up in strange places, something is going to go wrong. So I thought, what if the car he was in crashed and the driver's killed? He's not, but he's unconscious. Then I thought that would be a great starting point. And the other thing with Reacher is that it's almost like you've got to give the bad guys a chance, because Reacher's, as everybody's come to know, he's very big, he's very strong, he's very smart, he can figure out his way out of puzzles, he can solve mysteries. And I thought, what if you take some of those advantages away? That's why in the accident, he lost his memory, had gone, he couldn't remember how he got there, what had happened, and he had broken his wrist. In terms of his ability to headbutt people, that was diminished because concussion. In terms of punching people, his wrist was broken. It really made him, I felt like it made him work harder. And I think that if you give your character some kind of a disadvantage like that, it forces you to work harder too, because you have to give them ways to overcome those obstacles. I just thought it was a good way to start. And then I thought, we'll write that scene, put him in that dire situation, and then figure out how he gets out of it.
Yes, and we keep turning the pages because we know he's going to get out of it. Nobody's going to get away with doing this to him. Oh, actually, the idea of waking up in a dark room shackled is so frightening. For a few minutes as I'm reading it, I'm like, oh, I can't take it. I can't take it. But so you bring in a new character, Jenny Knight, and of course, tell us a little bit about her and how that idea came too, because she's a nice character. I like her.
She is a nice character. I'm glad you say that. And actually, Tasha and I had the most bizarre experience. We took a trip to India last year, and we were staying at this incredible 18th century fort on the bank of a sacred river that was still run by a descendant of technically a Maharaja who was descended from the queen who built this fort. And we were having dinner. The idea was all the guests would come and meet at the dinner table every night for dinner. And as we got to the table, I heard somebody saying, "I love Jenny Knight." And it turned out that they just read the book, which was lovely. And Jenny Knight in the story, she winds up working pretty closely with Reacher, but their initial meeting does not go well, because Jenny she's a police detective from Phoenix, Arizona, who's been disgraced, and she's trying to work her way back to redemption and also get vengeance for someone who has done something bad to her father. And the descriptions the wires get crossed. And so she believes that the person staying in a particular motel room is the person who killed her father. So she sets out to get the guy, but of course it turns out it's actually Reacher staying in that room. And so their initial meeting does not go very smoothly, but they get it ironed out, and Reacher recognizes a kindred spirit, I think, and they wind up working very closely together.
Yeah, and I'm glad to hear about that reaction, that somebody would say that. Just right out, because that's exactly how I felt. I liked her. Oh, it's just once I knew she wasn't going to kill Reacher or something, I liked her. And so, of course, we always have bad guys, a lot of bad guys. And I don't know how much of the plot and you want to reveal. You've done quite a few interviews because this came out in October and we haven't had a chance to speak before this. The months haven't they just all blended together? It's been like a crazy few months between one thing and another. So tell us what you want to do about the bad guy.
Yeah, it's interesting. And this is really something that Tasha always does too in her books, is if you are going to have a bad guy, they need to be really one of probably the most interesting characters, because it's boring if they're just a cartoonish black and white bad guy. There's an expression, it's been attributed to all kinds of different people. Somebody was caught robbing a bank and they were asked, why did you do it? And they said, well, because that's where the money is. That's not a very interesting motive. It's a much more interesting motive if the character is doing something, undeniably bad and horrible. And in Reacher books, he's going to be pretty horrible. But at the same time, if there's something that you can actually relate to in some little way, not enough to make you say, yeah, I would do those terrible things too, because we're not awful people. But at least if you could understand why that person was acting the way they do, if you can create some kind of a grey area to operate in, where the character, even though they're bad, they're understandable and there's a degree of sympathy. So the person who turns out to be technically the villain in this book, their motivations aren't necessarily all bad. And I think that as you unfold, people describe Reacher books often as being like the layers of an onion. You peel them back and you go one layer after another. And when you get to the center and you realize who the bad guy was and why he was doing what he did, perhaps you say, yeah, he needed to be stopped, but I can see why he did it.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, the storyline, it was unexpected. I didn't know the direction that you were going, which also is a fun part of.
I'm glad you say that, PatZi, because that's exactly what we aim for, because we try to write in a way where things aren't too clearly established initially. We try to let the story go where it needs to go. And so a lot of the time, it's a surprise to us too. And we feel like if it's a surprise to us while we're writing it, we hope it'll be a surprise to the readers while they're reading it. And so it makes me very happy that you felt like it was going like that.
And when you're working on it, I know that you're not the kind to plot every minute out, which is great, because I think so many things come to you as you're writing. And what did you find the most surprising thing that happened?
I think probably the most surprising was where the final showdown occurred, because when I started off, I had absolutely no idea that they were going to go to the place that they wound up in. No idea at all. And
yeah, don't tell people, because I had no idea. I thought it was going to be right there around that little opening scene, and it was quite a surprise.
That's what I was expecting, because I always like to have a contrast from the previous book and the book before, The Secret. They were in different cities. Reacher was back in the army and he was investigating a crime, and it took him to Chicago and Washington and different cities around the country. And this time I wanted to make it a small place, not even really a town, just a sort of almost just like a remote house. And initially I was expecting just to stick with that kind of real claustrophobic feeling. But at each juncture, you say to yourself, all right, what would Reacher do next? What would the bad guy do next? What would the other characters do next? What would Jenny Knight do next? They would do next was go to this particular location. And so
this is exactly what you said. I got the impression when I started the book, I thought this is really a local scene, that it's going to stay local. Some of the books they're right there. You don't go more than 10 miles in any direction. And I thought it was going to be like that, really tight. And it certainly changes, which makes it so much fun.
And that was just entirely just an organic product of the way that the story was unfolding, one episode after another. And it was totally unexpected, but I feel like it was looking back now, it was really the only place that it could have finished. It's really satisfying, but also as back to your question, it was also really surprising to me because that at the beginning of the book, often people that are working on the covers or are working on the promotional side, they'll often say, where's it going to be set? What locations are they going to be? And you don't want to be unhelpful, but we just don't know, because until you've worked through the entire story, you just don't know where they're going to end up. And this is a great example of that.
Of course, also, I think in this book, you're doing a little bit more, perhaps a little bit, your dialogue is a little bit wittier. Do you think you have a little bit more wit in here?
Well,
what do you think?
I mean, I hope so. That's lovely that you were picking up on that. I'm delighted, because back to the very first one that I worked on with my brother, The Sentinel, before we sat down to write that book, he was famous for never outlining, never planning too far ahead, always taking things a step at a time. But the only thing that I think he's ever really consciously set out to change at the beginning of the book was when we studied on The Sentinel, he said to me that he felt that Reacher had been allowed to become too far behind the curve when it came to technology. Reacher, it was a very strange thing. It got out of hand, I think, because if you look back at the early Reacher books, if you look at Persuader, which is about to be the one on the new series of the TV show, that was the 7th book written all of those years ago. And in that book, Reacher had a little device hidden in the heel of his shoe that could effectively send email. All of those years ago, Reacher's sending emails from a device concealed in his shoe. So clearly this is a man that can, if necessary, use technology. And also we know that Reacher's really smart. So if there was a machine that was complicated, he would figure out how to use it. And also he is a skilled and experienced investigator. So if there was something that would enable him to track down clues more quickly or more efficiently, of course he's going to use it. He's not going to turn his back on it. I think the thing with Reacher and technology is not really that he couldn't understand how to use the technology. It was he couldn't understand why people use it. If you think about some of the social media stuff where people are posting pictures of the sandwich they ate for lunch, Reacher wouldn't understand. Who would care what kind of sandwich you had? And if it was even just about making phone calls, he would think, who would want to phone me? I haven't got any friends really, so why would I need a phone? So it wasn't that he couldn't understand how, it was he couldn't understand why. And I think that's what Lee had really built on, but he felt he'd gone too far. So he said in that first collaboration, the only thing he consciously wanted me to do was to move Reacher forward technologically. So that's why the kind of backdrop in that book was cybercrime, because it would be something that Reacher just wouldn't have understood. So bringing him into that world automatically achieved what Lee wanted. But what I said in return is, yeah, sure, I can do that, because he knew I knew more about technology than he did because of the different jobs I'd had. And I said, yeah, I'm happy to do that. And it makes sense to me to do it. But what I believe is, if we're going to take one step forward in terms of the technology, what I wanted to do was take a step back in terms of the way Reacher talks to the other characters, because in the early Reacher books, the long-term fans, if you go back to the 2nd or 3rd book, Reacher was actually hilarious. He would destroy people verbally. He was witty, he was sarcastic, he was sardonic. And not only was that enormously satisfying as a reader, the 3rd book, which was Running Blind in the United States, The Visitor in other places, there was a scene where he was driving in a car with a woman who turned out to not be a very nice character. And Reacher just dismantled her with his words. And I felt that we're missing a string to the bow here. Like we were saying earlier, we know he's strong, we know he can fight, we know he can shoot, we know he can headbutt people. Why take away an extra weapon that he can use? So I said to Lee, if we're going forward with the technology, let's also go back to what we've lost in terms of his wittiness and his sarcasm. And Lee thought about it, and he realized he hadn't actually intentionally changed the way Reacher spoke, but it had just happened. And he said, yeah, you're right, we have lost something, we need to go back. All of the books that I've worked on or written, I have deliberately wanted to bring back that aspect of the original Reacher, because Reacher is something that Lee and I have in common. We live with him together this is going to be 30 years now. The first 24 Lee had the job of writing everything down. Since then, I've had the job of doing that. He's somebody that we understand really well. And bringing that aspect of him back to the forefront was something I felt was really important. And it's something that I've really enjoyed doing.
I think it's great. As you said, in book 7, he was the beginning of Inspector Gadget.
He was.
Luckily, he didn't evolve into that, because we need him still. We need all the choreographed fight scenes. Do you and your brother, do you ever choreograph the fight scenes together? Do you do that?
Not really. We just do it based on, we just imagine the situation where you set something up involving one or more bad guys, and then you just picture that in your head, and you think, if that was a situation that you were in, thinking back to your misspent youth back in England, then what would you do? How would you get out of it? What would be the most efficient way to deal with these guys? And I think that's what people enjoy about the Reacher fight scenes. It's that they don't just happen. Reacher thinking about it, okay, almost as a mechanical puzzle. You've got these obstacles, they need to be removed. How do we do that? It's almost like you've got these machines. How do you disable them? How do you disarm them? How do you break them? And so he thinks about it before he does it. And that's part of the fun.
It is part of the fun. And although I think it would be fun to see you and your brother out there in the backyard, Wyoming, just doing these fight scenes together, but not really hitting each other.
Well,
Tasha could film it.
Yeah. A good friend of ours, a writer called Zoe Sharp. I don't know if she's ever been a guest to PatZi, but if not, you'd love her. She's fantastic. And Zoe has a character that originally a lot of people used to liken to be a sort of female Jack Reacher. And she, at book conferences, she would actually hold demonstrations of all the different moves that her character would make. I think it would be a fun thing, but not sure it's for me and Lee.
I have to interview her, because she sounds like my kind of person. Because when I used to do kickboxing, and I was doing kickboxing years before it became popular for women to do it. I was the first woman. I started training with a U.S. Marine, and those were great days. But we sometimes put on demos, and we would choreograph it before, because we didn't actually kick each other. Yeah.
Well, in that case, you definitely need to talk to Zoe. I'll send you her info after.
Oh, I have to. Sounds like my kind of person.
Great.
Now, I want to get back this is a great book, and I see the new sort of title fashion that you have on. Of course, Lee Child at the top. Everybody knows that name. But the big thing, of course, Reacher is right there, because people know to ask for Reacher books when they're looking for a book. They go to a bookstore. We hope people go to bookstores and ask, so it's real easy to find. And Reacher even has his own website, which is not many characters get their own website, so he has an advantage there. But I was thinking, when I was looking at this book, I looked at some of the other ones, which some I have autographed books that you sent me. Thank you very much. And it was in, I think it's 2026 or something, Better Off Dead, and that's where the two of you dedicate your book to your wives. Yeah.
I think so. But how could we not, when we have such lovely and charming?
The new Tasha book. Now that's special. She's got a really special dedication there. Tasha, look. Read your dedication.
Well, for Andrew, in one kiss, you'll know all I haven't said.
Oh, that is beautiful.
Yes, I put it on the screen there so people can see it. Because I thought that was a cute one. With the number of books you guys are writing, you're going to run out of people. I don't know.
And you never want to hurt anyone's feelings is the other thing. But every now and again, I can't resist. I think you've had a few dedicated to you over the years.
Yes.
Now. Yeah.
You do good. He gives good dedication.
My favorite one was, there was one that we dedicated to your father. And I think the dedication was for Gary Gutting, who made windows where there were once only walls, because he was an expert in the French philosopher Foucault, and that was Foucault's description of what a philosopher did. So we couldn't resist doing that.
He was great, of course, a professor, and I think I still have some of his articles. When I moved, my goodness, the things I found. Over the years, I had put articles, stuffed them in books. I found over $200 in money that I had put in books. If I had a nice brand new $20 bill, I'd shove it in a book. And as I'm packing them to come to Texas, I'm opening out, oh my goodness. And it was over $200 in $20 bills.
In England, that's difficult because in England, the banknotes expire after a certain length of time. It's double-edged because often you'll find a £20 note that you stashed somewhere, but then if you're unlucky, you did it too long ago and you can't use it anymore.
Yeah, I don't like that.
No.
No, I didn't know they expired.
I didn't know that either until, because if I was in Europe or if I was in Britain, you come back with some cash and I would just stick it in a little bag and shove it away until the next time I was going to be in that country. And I had some, I think it was a 20-pound note and a few others.
Yeah.
I had them sitting in a drawer, and Andrew was going back to England, and I said, oh, I've got money. Here, take it. And he goes, oh yeah, this money isn't good anymore. This is expired.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I guess expire is not technically the right word. I guess what they do is they withdraw a particular design of each note and then replace it with a new one.
Oh, that's
and
okay. It becomes a collector's
yeah,
item.
Yeah, there's a period where both are okay, and then after a while,
then you're not allowed to. Yeah, the old ones you aren't legal tender anymore.
But you know,
I had no idea.
Yeah, but this is it was a very important life lesson to me because I was born back in the day before Britain had a decimalized currency, when it was what they called pounds, shillings, and pence, and that was replaced with just pounds and pence. And again, there was a parallel period where both sets of coins were valid, and then the old ones got phased out. But I was too young at the time. I was very small. I didn't really understand what was going on. All I knew was that all of a sudden, money went from something that you could never have to all of these people, relatives, neighbors, whatever, giving me money, giving me these coins. And I was thinking, this is fantastic. I've got all this money. I wonder what I can spend it on. And the answer was, I couldn't spend it on anything because they didn't give it to me until after it had become obsolete. I thought that was a very useful lesson. If somebody's giving you something, it's probably not worth having.
As a matter of fact, you mentioned before allowance. I was going to ask you, that was one of the questions. This is funny. That was one of the questions that one of my listeners asked. What was your first allowance? And now when you mention it, of course, Jim would have had his allowance in shillings. And when you came along, by the time you were getting an allowance, it would have been in this new stuff that I don't like. I don't know why they changed it. I love the shilling. I think it was, I still love to read that. So what was your first allowance when you started, when you were little? When did you get an allowance?
I can't remember what age it was. It wasn't ever really, allowance makes it sound a little bit grander than it was. We had what they used to call pocket money, which was just about enough to buy a few candies at the end of the week on your way home from school or something like that. It wasn't really a significant amount of money. Our father was from Northern Ireland, and he was of the mind that if you hadn't worked for it, you didn't deserve it, and it wasn't worth having anyway. Anything that we wanted, we had to either earn the money directly, or we had to do chores around the house or do stuff for neighbors or stuff like that in order to earn the money. Yeah, I never really had an allowance as such. When I was a kid, pocket money, which was peanuts, or else if you wanted it, go out and earn it.
So what was your first job?
Oh my God, I actually, it's difficult getting jobs because everybody wanted them. The most common job people had, we called them paper rounds. I think you call them paper routes here. And I couldn't, I remember being horrified. I went to this one newsagent and asked if there were any paper rounds going. And there was one, but they said that I had to be there at 4 o'clock. And I remember thinking, that's going to be tough since I won't be back from school in time. And then I realized I meant 4 in the morning. So I thought, yeah, this isn't. Then I tried to get a job at a supermarket stacking shelves, and I didn't get it. They wouldn't give it to me. So I still actually have a grudge against that supermarket chain. I won't shop there anymore, even though that was how many years ago now? More than 40 years ago that they wouldn't give me a job. So I still had a grudge against them. So actually the first real job you could say I had was, and it's a disgraceful job really, it was awful to take it. It was in Watford High Street in England. I was working for a company that sold timeshare holidays. And so my job was to stand on Watford High Street, identify likely looking people, and try to convince them to go to a presentation on timeshares where company people themselves would come in and try to sign them up. And I remember, so I started doing this job, and the way they paid you was quite complicated. It was to do, first of all, you got paid not very much for each name you got recorded on this special sheet. Then you got a little bit more if they showed up for the presentation. And then you got a little bit more if they actually signed up. And I've just always been the most cynical, mistrustful person going. And it struck me that how would I know whether any of these people that I signed up would actually showed up? I'm not going to these presentations, so I don't know who's there. All the people I sign up might show up, and they might tell me no one did. And I didn't like that. And another guiding principle I've always had is to get your retaliation in first. And so rather than stand in the middle of Watford High Street, which is not very attractive. Sorry, anybody who's from Watford, although you probably agree with me anyway. And also cold and miserable at the time of year I was working. And so what I used to do is go to the cafe, get the phone book, and basically copy random names onto the sheet, because I thought they're gonna screw me, so I'll screw them first. So that was the first job I had. And I didn't make very much money because there wasn't much to be made, but it held me over until the next job I had, which was much better. It was working in a gas station, which we had a little convenience store attached to it. And we could talk for ages about that. I learned lots of really important life lessons working in that gas station.
And you call it a gas station?
I'm translating.
You're translating, because it's funny. Somebody said, you're being contagious, because I still say petrol. I'm always saying petrol. And I say boot. I've been using an Uber recently, and so I say, would you put that in the boot for me? And they look at me like, what?
Yeah. You got to consider what you've got under the bonnet of your car, haven't you?
Exactly. And somehow, I think it was so exciting to drive in England. And actually, I love going to the petrol station, because it would give them such a thrill to have to fill a Cadillac.
They would probably be on the phone to the wholesalers afterwards, getting their tanks refilled, I would imagine.
They just loved it. I think everybody working in the stations were always so sweet. So I really loved doing that. And I started my paper route at the age of 7.
Wow.
And
I did that for 5 years. I didn't give it up.
So did you, was it one of those ones, because in England, if you have the paper round, you actually have to post the paper right through the letterbox. Was it like that with you, or was it one of those where you could fling it onto the front lawn?
I rode my bike, and it was the evening paper, so I delivered them after school. So straight after school.
I didn't like the idea of it much anyway, even before I found out about that ridiculous starting time. But I think if I could have flung the papers, I think I'd have been a lot more in tune with it than having to actually go and feed them in through the little letterbox.
There was only one that I had to deliver and put it through the slot, and but it was, everybody in town thought it was a scary house, and it was the kind of place kids thought a witch lived in there. I collected on Friday afternoon, so everybody had to pay me. But she just put a very nice little envelope. She never wrote anything on it. She just put it there by the door for me to pick up. But I was scared going up those stairs to her house.
In England, it's really just a practical thing. You live there. If you just toss them into the front yard, it'll be that all you'd have is like a whole neighborhood full of paper mache, because it just rains all the time and everything would, be destroyed.
Most people here don't have a letterbox.
Yeah. And also,
like you might have a mailbox outside on your house, or if you're on a rural route on the street, but you want it on your front porch.
And also, depending on which part of England you were talking about, they'd probably all get stolen anyway. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. There are places in England you definitely don't want to be throwing newspapers. What about you, Tasha? Did you work? But you were a little princess, so I don't know. I always imagine you as a little princess.
I wish. I started babysitting when I was 9 years old. And that's pretty astonishing to me that people when I was 9 were paying me to watch their children. And I babysat through college. But my first job was I worked in the gift shop and the concession stand at the Potawatomi Zoo in South Bend.
The Potawatomi Zoo.
Yep.
Okay.
It was actually it was a fun job. You got to be at the zoo, and it was pretty good. It was fun.
The
it was a
concession
fun job.
stand? You sold peanuts?
We had popcorn, we had candy, we had ice cream. We were allowed to eat as much ice cream and popcorn as we wanted, which was really nice.
That's a good starter job. I think that's a good starter job.
It was a fun job. You got to know the zookeepers and they'd show you stuff about the animals. So that was fun. So I worked there. I guess I just worked there for about a year. And then I got a job as a part-time receptionist at a life insurance company in South Bend. And so I would work there after school. Jim Lennox, he was the agent. He was such a nice man. And that was a really nice job. Everybody was very kind.
Drew, I want to say one thing about selling timeshares. Now, I hope you didn't sell any because it's almost impossible for people to get rid of timeshares.
I know, it's a dreadful thing.
So
and,
there might be somebody in England to whom you sold a timeshare who is still paying for that timeshare. So if they find out that you're the one who got them in trouble.
That was another reason for plucking the names at random out of the phone book, because then, of course, if they hadn't ever actually signed up on the form, they wouldn't have known that they were supposed to go to the presentations. That reduced the chances of anybody actually buying any of these horrible things.
I feel better about that because I think people who bought timeshares and they're going to calculate what year and if they were on that street and if you were the one, they can identify you. They're going to come after you and say, "Get me out of this timeshare."
Was that I figured it was a little underhanded, but I thought, well, these are predatory people I'm dealing with, so I'll just be predatory first. So yeah, I don't think any names that I used actually ever showed up to the presentation.
We don't have to. You have a few skeletons in your closet. I have a listener who is determined yet going up to Edinburgh. She's going to find it one day. We're going to find you on stage up there in Edinburgh.
That could be very alarming, I think.
Yeah, but they are sure there is a photo of you up there. We won't tell people what you're doing, but it's very interesting. And of course, I mentioned to you this wonderful place where you can go next time you go up there. Now, we, like you, the George Hotel is my favorite one. I love going to Scotland, and for me, it was always a big treat to go to Scotland. There's something, I love the sound of it. I love the look of it. I love the accent. But the Robert Louis Stevenson home is also there, and it's right near the hotel. So you have to go there next time.
Yeah, we do. I did that Ancestry.com thing recently, and according to it, I'm 66% Scottish. So no wonder I felt at home there.
66%, that's good. And of course, Tasha, you promised me. Where is the photo of him in his kilt?
Oh!
You said you would show it to me. I want to see him in his kilt.
I'm pretty sure that no photos of me in my kilt exist.
Oh, you're wrong about that. You were wrong about that.
Wow, this is almost breaking news if we get a picture.
But I thought this was a family show, PatZi. You can't be showing pictures of me in a kilt and expect people to not be traumatized.
Oh, come on.
Oh, I bet you look gorgeous. I bet you look gorgeous.
When?
So it's so funny. When was the first time you read Treasure Island?
Oh, I must have been like 6, I think. My dad brought me, he was giving a talk at the University of Pittsburgh. And when he came back, he gave me a leather-bound book that was the collected works of Robert Louis Stevenson. And I still have that book. It's over here. Where is it? Anyway, it's somewhere over there on that shelf.
Yeah, I don't know. I must have been probably 8 or 9.
Yeah, I was the same. I remember reading it. I lived in northern Michigan where it was just wild country. And we had, of course, along Lake Superior, long white beach, gorgeous beaches up there. And I used to pretend, I love those stories.
All right, I'm searching in vain. Kilt picture. I haven't found it yet.
We'll have to get it next time because now I can see things. Yeah, you can. Yeah.
It hasn't disappeared. It exists.
Yeah.
I hope it hasn't been accidentally deleted.
I have the original hard copy somewhere too.
That's true.
It's just so much fun. Oh, I wanted to show you this. Of course, I don't have my microphone here. Oh, goodness, what do I do? I move my mic. How can I? There. Look, I have a necklace from India that my son just brought me. He just came back from India. and it's
Oh,
beautiful.
that is beautiful.
Isn't it
Yeah.
gorgeous?
Gorgeous.
And
Gorgeous.
and so tell us about your trip to India, because my son said it was fantastic. He loved it.
PatZi, we loved every minute of it. We just, from the minute we landed in Delhi, the whole place just made sense to us. We felt so at home there. We loved the people. We loved all the amazing sights we saw, and the food. I'm still having withdrawal because I miss Indian breakfast. I want curry 3 times a day. It was just spectacular.
Yeah, the culture, the people, the history, it was just all absolutely mind-blowing. It was, in a way, it was a dangerous situation because we had really high expectations. And when you go into something with high hopes, sometimes that can be bad. Everything we saw, it just exceeded the wildest dreams that we had. It was just absolutely incredible. We would have stayed permanently in any of the different places we were in. We could not have had a better time. It was incredible.
No, it was amazing. And the woman who planned the trip for us, Philippa Kay, she just did the most astonishing job. Every detail was perfect. All these moving pieces just fit together we had no bump in the road.
Nice.
And we got to see the usual sorts of places, but then we saw a lot of off the beaten path places that were just really mind-blowing.
Yeah, stuff that we weren't expecting, that we just found ourselves involved in and surrounded by. And it was just absolutely, it's one of those, it's a cliche that people use, but it's true. It was really life-altering because you saw things that you just would never encounter here, would never even conceive of. It was wonderful. Yeah, Philippa Kay, she has a great site on Instagram.
Yeah, she takes just the most beautiful photographs in India.
So where did you start off? Where did you land, and what cities did you visit?
So we started in Delhi. So we landed in Delhi, and then we were there for a couple of days at the Imperial Hotel, which was phenomenal.
Unbelievable.
From there, we went to Agra. We saw the Taj Mahal. And the second, I can't remember the name of the second mausoleum that we went to. It's like a little jewel box. It's this beautiful, beautiful place that a lot of people think inspired the idea for the Taj Mahal. And then from there, we got to take a train, which was so fun. We were excited to be on the train. And we went up to Panna, where there is a national park where you can see tigers. And we stayed in this just phenomenal, tiny little hotel. There were maybe like a dozen cottages run by a husband and wife. He does all the cooking. All the food was just divine. And you go out on safari in the morning. We saw a couple tigers. We saw a leopard. We saw the world's finest wild boar. He was magnificent.
We saw crocodiles.
And then that is also near the town. Oh my gosh, this is terrible. What is the name of it? Starts with a K. People always talk about the erotic temples. And yeah, there are some erotic panels, but that's really not the point of the place or the temples. It all goes within the context of Hindu architecture and the flow going from starting at the base with nothing and getting up to the place of enlightenment where you once again have nothing. That was an astonishing place to see. And then we'd need a whole extra episode to tell about Andrew's experience with the naked monks there.
What is
this? It's probably not safe for work.
No.
But where did we go? So after Panna, we left Panna and
Bhopal next.
We went to Bhopal. And Bhopal is a place that a lot of tourists don't go, but Philippa, knowing my work, wanted me to see it because this is a place that throughout the 19th century was ruled by Muslim women. So just phenomenal. The Begums of Bhopal, they ran the show for the better part of a century. And it was phenomenal to see the palaces. It was a really neat place. I would definitely go back there. They had an amazing tribal museum.
Yeah, it had a different vibe to it because they had what had once been incredibly ornate and beautiful palaces. But I guess because it's not so much on the normal tourist path, a lot of these were not in as good shape. But there's something about seeing buildings in different states of repair and disrepair. You can appreciate them in a different way. They're perhaps a little bit more like they had been in use rather than as museums. And so it was an absolutely fascinating,
really fascinating.
place to be.
And it also, we to get there, we had to drive, and it was an 8-hour long drive. And that was just absolutely fascinating. Just driving through these, back roads in India, through these tiny little villages, and seeing just the colors. And it was just amazing. It was amazing. And
Did
then
you go on an elephant?
No.
We did not. We actually in Agra went to two wildlife sanctuaries where they rescue elephants and they rescue sloth bears. The sloth bears were used for the dancing bears throughout the country. And this wildlife organization was founded with the idea of ending the tradition of the dancing bears, because of course they're torturing the bears.
Terrible what they do to them.
Terrible.
Yeah.
Absolutely terrible. They had a really amazing approach to bringing the dancing bear tradition to an end. And that was, they said, look, if we want, you can't just go and take the bears from people, right? Or even if you paid them for the bears, they're just going to go get more bears. What you have to do is give them a path to a different livelihood. And you have to give their children a path to a different livelihood. So they raise money to send the children of the people who are in that trade to schools so that they can learn other things to do rather than having dancing bears. And they trained the handlers of the bears to do other things, to become artisans making handicrafts and doing different things. And they have succeeded so completely that there are no longer any dancing bears in India. But they've got a refuge where, the ones who had been dancing bears and obviously were so traumatized and physically injured, so they have a refuge for them and take care of them.
Yeah, the organization is called Wildlife SOS, and they have just in the last couple of days rescued another elephant and taken it back to the hospital. It's an incredibly worthwhile organization.
Yeah, it's really amazing. And the elephants, we saw the elephant rehab place too, and elephants live in herds and they're very social animals. But what you get in countries where they're being used in other ways, like you'll have temple elephants. That temple elephant is just by him or herself outside a temple being given offerings of food, and they eat way too much. There was one former temple elephant there who, when she arrived, had been 2,000 pounds overweight. But her whole life, she was the representation of Ganesh, and people would bring her sweets to eat. So once they get the elephants physically more healthy, they have them all every afternoon go out for a walk as a group so that they can start to socialize again and understand that they're going to be safe and that they can. And so they make friends, and the keepers will watch and be like, okay, these two like hanging out, so we'll put them next to each other. Except that former temple elephant who was 2,000 pounds overweight, she has two very good friends now, other elephants, and they had put all three of them in an enclosure together so that they could start to operate more as a little mini herd. But they unfortunately had to put her next door to the other two because she just ate literally all of the food, because that's what she was used to. She was just used to that. But so that was really neat to see those two places.
It was.
But yeah, and then we went to Amritsar because we wanted to see the Golden Temple, the famous Sikh temple in Amritsar, where, so the Sikhs believe that you should help people, and they don't proselytize, they don't try to convert you, they don't want to tell you what their beliefs are, but what they do want to do is feed you. And so you can go into any Sikh temple anywhere in the world and get a hot meal free anytime. So at the Golden Temple, they sometimes will feed 100,000 people a day. And so it's an astonishingly beautiful place. But we also got to tour the kitchens and see just what it takes to feed that many people in a day is pretty extraordinary.
Oh, I can't even imagine. Yeah, that's...
Yeah. And then we finished up in Darjeeling on a tea plantation with an amazing view of the Himalaya. And we were there on my birthday. It was heaven. It was heaven.
It was really nice.
Yeah. And at the plantation we were staying at, when we first came, there's a cocktail hour every evening. And so when we first arrived, it was just about time for cocktails. And when we walked in, they said to us, "Oh, before we get your drinks, we just need to know what time tomorrow morning would you like us to bring your bed tea?"
Nice. That's nice.
Mm-hmm.
So I would like bed tea. We would like someone to bring us bed tea every morning.
Yeah, it's an easy habit to get used to.
Yeah.
Well, I've been wondering why you really, just even for 6 months, there's that butler school in London where the famous butlers learn to buttle. I think just for fun, really for fun, and maybe to write a book. Hire one of the ones, go there and see the graduating class and get the one that is the stiffest and stuffiest and hire him. And then bring him to Wyoming.
I think it would be very, well, I think it would be, first of all, you would probably get used to it very fast and that would be hard to give it up. But I think also that just in modern society, we're just not programmed to have someone around all the time, right? That's something I think about a lot when I'm writing the Emily books. If you were an upper class Brit at that time, you would never be alone. There would always be servants around. And I don't know, that would be strange. I guess this is why you got people considering their servants to be akin to furniture, because if you started thinking, I don't want to say this in front of them, you're just never going to talk because there's always someone there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not even the upper class, even the middle class. They had a cook and they'd have a scullery person. They didn't do their own work.
No.
They would never iron. A middle class person wouldn't iron in those days. They had.
I'm not going to iron either.
But
I just don't suppose it would be ironed.
Yeah, I haven't ironed anything in years. Can't imagine it anymore. Andrew, I know you like to write at night. And Tasha, are you a morning person or a night person too?
I am a morning person. I like to get up, I exercise, I make tea, I go straight and start working. Because my brain is clearer then. I haven't been distracted by anything. So I try to get my work done before I can be distracted by anything.
Andrew, when you're working at night, are you drinking coffee at night too?
Oh, yeah.
Although he's very reformed now. He drinks
I drink less
about
than I used to.
1/100th less coffee than he used to.
But I find in the day, there's all kinds of other things going on. There's all kinds of things that people want you to do. And they're constantly, there's always something that's broken that needs to be fixed, or something that someone's desperately needing you to go and intervene in some way. And there's things pulling you in 100 different directions in the day. But at night, it's something about the way, as the sun goes down and all the light dims, and you're left with just the pool of light that is cast from your computer screen. To me, then the whole world has melted away, and the only world that exists that's left is what's included in that little pool of light. And then it's just you and the story that you're telling, and there's nothing else to distract you. There's no one to come and say, can you come and fix this, or can you come and do that? And
I just want to go on the record to say that I am not every day going and saying, can you come and fix this?
No. But there's always someone. And yeah, I just find that's the only time that my mind clears, and it's just me and the story.
I have a big question. Actually, it's for the three of you, for Lee Child, Andrew Child, and Tasha Alexander. And this is a big question. It comes from one of my listeners, and they want to know pie. In England, we didn't eat so many pies as we do here. Here in America, in most towns, you can find a house of pies, a pie factory. So with Jack, what's his favorite pie? And what's Lee's? What's yours?
Yeah, pie, that's an interesting thing, isn't it? Because there's actually something really beautiful about a good pie, I think. But for Lee and me growing up in England, I don't know if this is categorically true, but our experience was really that pies were often much more savory. You'd have steak and kidney pie, beef and onion pie, chicken and mushroom pie. And so it would be more likely to be this savory part of your meal rather than a dessert. Even you'd have them in when you were out. If you go to the football, the soccer, you'd always get a pie, and as different cultures were embraced more wholeheartedly. If you go to our favourite football ground now, Villa Park in Birmingham, you're probably going to have a chicken balti pie. It's going to be fantastic. We do like pies. We tend to think of them more as a savoury thing.
It's more like our chicken pot pie.
Yeah. And Richa, he likes simple, straightforward things. So he likes his burgers, and then he likes his pies, apple pie, peach pie, anything like that.
What do you like? Which pie?
Me, I don't really like sweet pies at all. I don't really like fruit at all. Therefore, I'm not going to really like it in a pie.
You eat it, though. This is news to me.
I like savory pies.
No, she's asking what kind of dessert pie you like. You eat pumpkin pie, you eat apple pie, you eat cherry pie.
Yeah.
And now I'm finding out that he's lying about liking all this. Huckleberry pie.
If they're there, I'll eat them, but they're not they're something I could fairly easily live without, I think.
Honestly, this is like the weird thing, is that we just don't have a culturally compatibility with desserts.
Yeah.
He doesn't eat any American desserts, and I like sticky toffee pudding, but I'm not really a dessert eater.
You don't really, no, you don't eat any.
I want cheese. Is what it comes down to.
Yeah, we can agree on cheese.
Yeah.
In England, you have lots of desserts, but pies, they're savory usually. But I would do high teas in my little cottage, and I would have people over, and I love doing tea. I like to make a peanut butter pie with a layer of chocolate, and they'd go crazy because most of it had not had peanut butter. When I got to England, I don't think they even had peanut butter. I think maybe Marks and Sparks had peanut butter for American tourists, but they didn't have it in the regular grocery stores.
Yeah, when I was a student in London, people would have their parents mail them peanut butter.
Yeah.
You could buy it Fortnum and Mason, but it costs like $1 gazillion for this tiny.
Yeah, exactly. So when you were young, Drew, what kind of sweet did you eat?
My favorite has always been ice cream. We didn't have it very often, but ice cream. My mother would make all kinds of bizarre things. She would make custard and slice up bananas and put them in it. That was one of her sort of trademarks.
That's not bizarre.
I think it was bizarre. So she would do that. What we call jelly, but I guess it's Jello here, it was another thing, quick and easy. She used to make various kinds of mousse, like chocolate mousse, lemon mousse. That was good. I like that. But I don't know. I think I'm probably like Tasha in that I've always been more about the savory than about the sweet.
Of course, Tasha, you were a dancer when you were young, right?
Yeah, I did. So you're not really thinking about eating sweets.
Yeah, exactly. The dancers never touch this sweet. This is a Valentine's Day program. Tasha, what's the best Valentine gift you ever got from Drew?
Oh my God, he's outrageous and out of control. I've had many extraordinary gifts. Our thing with Valentine's Day, what we like to do is neither of us, we always take the day off. We never work. And we have what we like to call a floor picnic, where we've got champagne and then just whatever we usually have like cheese and charcuterie, and we just hang out all day and stay home and just talk, hang out.
Yeah.
Drink a lot of champagne.
Yeah, I'm with the champagne.
Yeah, it's a recurring theme.
It is a recurring theme. It is a recurring thing. And then we've got to the point now where we're not so much buying presents, but we'll say, oh, let's get this and have it be for Valentine's Day. So there was one year that we got each other North Face jackets.
Yeah.
Which doesn't sound very romantic, but it was a splurge at the time.
Yeah.
So it was.
And it is romantic, really, because when do you wear the North Face jackets? You wear them when you go out hiking together or when you go cross-country skiing together. So it's really more of a thing that enables an experience that you share rather than an item or a possession.
And in England, I didn't see that Valentine's Day was as important. It's not like when we were in school, we would give Valentines in class, we'd give Valentines to each other. It was a big deal all the time.
No, again, I don't know for sure how it is now, but when I was growing up and when I was a teenager, it was really specifically targeted to somebody that you either were in a relationship with or that you wanted to be in a relationship with. You were maybe giving one card to one person or and it might not even be reciprocated. It wasn't as wide, as broad as it is, as the impression I have that it is here. Just a sort of different approach, a different idea behind it.
They didn't get to make the fun little Valentine's boxes that you'd have on your desk, and then the party and everybody would go around. Remember at school, you drop it.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
That was good times. The conversation hearts.
Oh, they were great. Now, Asher, of course, had no experience with Valentine's Day. He didn't know what it was until I was getting Valentine's Day cards from my family. And he did get the idea that you're supposed to give roses on Valentine's Day. So he gave me 22 red roses on Valentine's Day, forever. 22. He bought 2 dozen. But because he liked palindromes, he wanted 22. So he would give the other 2, he'd buy them, and he'd tell the florist he only wanted 22. And they'd say, there's 24. And he said, no, I want 22. And so he'd buy 2 dozen, and he'd say, give them to the next person who comes in, who...
Oh, that's so
nice.
Sweet.
He enjoyed palindromes. So that was what he learned.
It was actually my favorite number.
Really?
Yeah. It's like a family thing. I don't know. My dad invented it. If something was really great, he would say, that's 22. So 22 is like the highest praise. So 22.
Nice.
Wow, that another of those golden threads.
Yep.
So many things that really, all these little connections that we've had over the years of things that that mean something to us. But 22, absolutely. I didn't expect that one. 18, of course, as I said, for the book, for Jewish people, you do 18 and you do double, triple, whatever. When you give gifts, you usually would get, a kid would get $18 for a holiday. And I had, in my little cottage, I had 36 roses, variety of roses. When I lived in England, that was lots of fun.
That's
so
great.
Now, the two of you, of course, right now, you mentioned cross-country skiing. You getting some of that now? You have lots of snow up there. I think all of America has lots of snow.
we actually have had just a beautiful snowstorm the last couple of days. It's like we're in a snow globe. It's so beautiful. So beautiful. Very cold right now. It doesn't matter so much when you're cross-country skiing because you get hot.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was hard for me in Death by Misadventure to have it be that Emily can't really ski since I love skiing.
Yeah, that part was definitely not autobiographical.
It was not.
No.
Speaking of Emily again, is Lady Emily any chance that she's going to land up going to India? Because British people did go to India so much in those days. They were always there. And
sure is. She is going to be staying in that 18th century fort that Andrew mentioned.
I knew it.
Prince Richard Holkar and his wife run. And yeah, so he's a direct descendant of this queen, Ahilya, who built the fort. She was an extraordinary woman who ruled that area for 30 years. And it's funny because before we left, I thought I had an idea for the India book. And as soon as I took 2 steps into that fort, I just said, the plan has changed. There is a new story. So it will be set there in Maheshwar.
I don't see Reacher landing up in India. He's done some international things, but...
Your finger is on the pulse, PatZi. Yes, he will not be going to India, I can safely say.
It was funny. We were in Fiji earlier in the year, in June, and the people we met there, if you've been to Fiji, everyone in Fiji is constantly shouting out "Bula" to you. It means it's similar. It's used in a similar way to aloha in Hawaii, and so everyone's always saying "Bula." And so all the people we met, once they knew they kept saying, "Please have Reacher say Bula in a book."
One thing that I was so happy about was in India, people love Reacher. It was amazing how much good feeling there was about Reacher when we were there. We were delighted to, because you get a sense sometimes from afar, but it's only really when you get to a place and you talk to people that they were. Credit to my brother, because so many people were genuinely had been brought so much pleasure by their adventures with Reacher. So that was a real delight. But
well,
I don't think I could.
Reacher is like a quintessential American. He's tough, he's fair, he's looking for justice, and he doesn't want to take the limelight. he just knocks the lights out of everybody else. He's a special character. And there are 100 million English readers in India that they don't read novels or books in other languages. Indians speak so many languages. Within their own country, they can speak 3 different languages, but for their studies, for their just relaxation, they like to read English books. And so you have right there a big audience.
I think he needs a book tour in India.
I would love to do that. If anybody from India is watching, I would be delighted to come and do some events in India. It would be fantastic.
They should. You didn't get to Bombay yet.
Not yet.
No. No, we were only there a month, and we felt like, it's such an enormous place. You can't see everything. And we wanted to be able to we didn't want to just be in a place for one day and move, be constantly on the move. And so we really just left it in Philippa's hands. We just said, we had 3 places that we knew we wanted to go. And we said, incorporate those places into whatever you think would be a good itinerary. So Bombay will have to be another time.
Yeah, my son really liked Bombay. That's where he got me this necklace, and he says it's really fantastic. So I can see that once the Lady Emily book is released, that's a perfect time for you guys to do a book tour. You can both be signing books and start in Bombay and head north a little bit. There are some other cities up there that you'll love. I love it. You've got your future planned. Now, again, I don't know if I covered it. I didn't cover all the questions. You're going to have to come back. You have to come back.
Oh, well,
yes,
we would love to. We would absolutely love to.
And because I don't have time to talk to you about all the books that you read, I want to talk to you about the Brontes. So will you come back we'll talk books and that?
We would love that. PatZi, we will come anytime you want.
You say the word and we'll be
getting to talk to you. We look forward to it so much.
Okay, that'd be great because I really love it. And we don't have time today, but we can also talk a little bit about a favorite character of mine too.
Oh, thank you, PatZi.
He's my favorite.
Yeah, it is. He's so good. And this is autograph. Thank you so much. And of course, it is Paul McGrath and the janitor of justice. Maybe we should call him, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So we have a few minutes. Just mention a little bit about this wonderful character. I really like him.
Thank you. Yeah, of all the characters I've written about, he's one of the ones I've enjoyed the most. And so the series is still going. It's just been interrupted slightly with all the stuff I've been doing with Reacher. But my idea was, in the same way that Reacher is an archetypal character going way back to the knight errant who appears in your town, fixes the problem, and then leaves. Another of those immortal archetypal characters is what we know in England as Robin Hood. He's a sort of fallen nobleman who's been abroad and comes back to his homeland and has to redeem himself, find a path back to acceptance. And Paul McGrath in these books, he was someone who his mother died in childbirth, and so he was brought up by his father, and his father was an adamant pacifist. So Paul's way of rebelling was to join the army. So he left home, joined the army, wound up in military intelligence, and went all over the world. And at a certain point, he wanted to mend fences with his father, so he wanted to come home and put things right. But when he did, his father had just died, and in fact, the police thought he'd been murdered. But the trial of the people that they thought were responsible collapsed in mysterious circumstances. And McGrath was determined to get to the bottom of this. All he knew was that something had gone amiss at the courthouse in New York. Being former military intelligence, he gets himself a job at the courthouse as a janitor. Because if you're the janitor, what can you do? You can go anywhere in the building, you will see everything, but no one will notice you. And so he had this free reign of the building. And as well as figuring out what happened to his father, discovering all kinds of family secrets that came home to roost, he would also come across miscarriages of justice. He was the person looking after the little guy. So when there was someone who had been cheated by a corporation or had been stiffed because someone else had unscrupulous lawyers, or even if something had just broken down in the system, And no one else would notice that these people had fallen through the gaps, but Paul McGrath would. And he would just very quietly and completely anonymously step in and right the wrongs. And I had this little kind of quirk in the books that the final sentence of each book, or the final scene, would be that the person who'd been saved would come back and find McGrath in the courthouse or nearby and say, listen, I don't understand it. Everything has been put right, but I don't know who did it. I don't understand. The only person I told about it was you. Did you do it? And he always would say, how could I do it? I'm just the janitor. And then it would move on to the next story. So I was having so much fun with that series, and it just felt right, because without, just like Reacher, without any sense of we're looking for a reward, not even recognition, because no one even knew who he was or what he was doing. He was just doing the right thing for the sake of doing the right thing, and it was just very satisfying to work on those stories, and to even if it's only on the page, if it's not in real life, there is a lot of satisfaction in seeing the good guys come out on top for once.
Actually, it inspired me. I like the ending, and a couple of times over the past few years, and I think coming out of the pandemic and just perhaps thinking more about how you can help people, I have been able to find a few what I call McGrath moments, where I can do something without telling anyone, just something that they need or something that needs to be done, and I've done it. And
that is fantastic. That is the best thing I've ever. I'm glad you're doing that.
That's so great.
I think it will inspire people. I think it's. I know you're a bit busy, and and your brother's a bit busy with the television series, which, wow, that's doing well.
Yeah.
So that's exciting. Have you gone to any of the filmings?
I'm due to go to part of the next season that's going to be filmed, but so not yet, but it's on the cards. But yeah, he's really enjoying it, because as he started out in television all those years ago before he got fired for his own McGrath moment, although he wasn't sufficiently anonymous and therefore got fired. But he started in television, back involved in television. So it's very nice symmetry for him, and he's really enjoying himself.
It is. To be on a set is wonderful. I love it. Oh, there's nothing. It's so exciting to be on a set. So I'm glad he's having fun. You're having fun. You're both having fun, and you're gonna have fun when you get to do a book signing in India, a whole tour of India again. Again, thank you so much for joining me for Valentine's Day. And Pekka just wants to say happy Valentine's Day. And we will have you back here, and we will talk books. I want to talk about so many books. I'll give a list, you give a list, and I'm sure we've probably read them together. Thank you so much for joining me today, and let's just show you both. I'm putting up the Jack Reacher website, and when you come back, we'll put up yours, Drew. But for Tasha, you have a nice website too. I love one thing I just love when you have on Instagram what you cook. Talking about Jack Reacher doesn't want a photo of what people are eating, but I do. I want to see what Tasha's cooking.
I will start posting that again, because I haven't done that for a while. I'm bringing it back.
It's like a professional cook. They look so beautiful. The presentation is so great.
Oh, that's very sweet. Thank you.
You think they look beautiful? You should taste them. They are even better.
They do. They look so great. And now, of course, are you practicing a few curry dishes?
Do you know, that is something that we have been cooking forever. We love making Indian food, but we've been doing that since we first met.
Yeah.
So still doing that. Really have to expand into Indian breakfast, though, because, that was so good.
Yeah, that was a real eye-opener for us, because we've cooked all kinds of Indian food over the years and eaten all kinds of Indian food over the years. But the range of breakfast foods, it was something that we just hadn't even considered, and it was absolutely delicious. We came back a few pounds heavier than we left, I can tell you.
And happier.
That's what my son said. He said it was like a massive buffet of food, and it was incredible. So yeah,
so much food, so good. We had a dinner on our balcony at the hotel across from the Taj Mahal. And I had arranged it as a surprise for Andrew. And the food was just so delicious, but there was so much of it that we couldn't even come close to finishing it all. And I wish I had that food now.
I know.
Okay. Again, thank you so much for joining me on Valentine's Day 2025. Can you believe it? We got through the pandemic and everything else, and here we are, 2025. It's hard to
Crazy.
believe. But thank you again. Thank you so much for joining me today on Joy on Paper Live, and we'll have you back soon, okay?
Absolutely. Thank you for having us.
Thank you,
Oh,
PatZi.
it's been a joy.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Bye-bye now.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Bye.
Happy Valentine's Day. Thank you for joining me and Pekka, because we are going to have a wonderful day today. And I hope that you will get TASHA Alexander's latest book, Death by Misadventure, and of course, Andrew Child's book, In Too Deep. They're wonderful books, and they're available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and wherever books are sold. And they're also available on Audible. Meanwhile, please subscribe to Joy on Paper Live so that I can bring you more interviews with fascinating authors. Just click that button, subscribe, comment, and share. And especially comment, because authors love to get comments, and their families look at these interviews and their families love comments. So click that button and subscribe to Joy on Paper Live. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful Valentine's Day. Bye-bye now.